I want to tell you something I learned the hard way. The people who raised you aren't always the people who will protect you. Sometimes, the hardest lesson comes when you realize that love and loyalty don't mean the same thing to everyone in your family. I graduated college on a Saturday in May. My parents didn't cry. They didn't hug me for long. They took photos, smiled at the right moments, and on the drive home my mother said, "Well, now the real work starts." I thought she meant job hunting. I didn't know she meant paying them back for the last 22 years. I moved back into my childhood bedroom that same weekend. The walls were still pale yellow. My old posters were gone, but the thumbtack holes remained. It felt smaller than I remembered, like the room had shrunk while I was away. I unpacked my boxes quietly, stacking textbooks I'd probably never open again on the shelf beside participation trophies from middle school. My mother stood in the doorway, watching. "We'll need to talk about arrangements," she said. "Now that you're done with school." I nodded. I assumed she meant chores, schedules, maybe some help with groceries. I told her I'd already started applying for jobs, that I had a part-time gig lined up at a local marketing firm, just temporary while I searched for something in my field. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good," she said, "because things are different now." I didn't ask what she meant. I should have. The job started the following Monday. It wasn't much: data entry, some social media posting, occasional copywriting for small clients, $15 an hour, 30 hours a week. It wasn't a career, but it was something. I wore business casual, packed a lunch, and tried to feel like an adult. My first paycheck came 2 weeks later, $450 after taxes. I came home that Friday, holding the pay stub like it was a diploma. My father was sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator and a notepad. My mother stood beside him, arms folded. "Sit down," he said. I sat. The kitchen smelled like reheated pasta. The overhead light buzzed faintly. "You're making money now," my father said, not looking up from his notepad. "So, we need to go over expenses." "Okay," I said slowly. He slid the notepad across the table. There was a list written in his blocky handwriting. Rent, utilities, food, internet, household contribution. "Rent?" I repeated. "You're an adult," my mother said. "Adults pay rent. I'm living in my bedroom." "You're living under our roof," she corrected. "That's not free." My father tapped the notepad. $300 a month for rent, $50 for utilities. You'll buy your own groceries. Another $100 monthly for general household upkeep. I stared at the numbers. $450. They wanted $450. "That's everything I make," I said. "Then you'll need to budget better," my mother said, "or find more hours." "I'm still looking for a real job. This is just temporary." "Then this is temporary too," my father said. "But while you're here, you contribute. We're not running a charity." Something cold settled in my chest. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to soften it, to say they were joking or that we'd work something out. She didn't. "We raised you," she said quietly. "We fed you, clothed you, paid for everything. Do you know how much that cost? Do you have any idea what we sacrificed?" I didn't answer. "You owe us," she said. "And now it's time to start paying back." I took the pay stub and went upstairs. I sat on my bed and stared at the number until it blurred. $450. Gone before I even saw it. The next morning, I bought my own shampoo, my own soap. I started keeping my toothpaste in my bedroom because I didn't want to use theirs. I felt like a guest. No, I felt like a tenant who wasn't welcome. I asked my father if we could talk about a lower amount, maybe $200, until I found something better. He said no. I asked if I could delay the first payment until my second check. He said no. I asked my mother if this was really necessary. She looked at me like I'd insulted her. "Necessary?" she repeated. "You think we wanted to spend 18 years raising someone who'd question us the moment we asked for help? I'm not questioning you. I'm just trying to understand." "You're trying to get out of responsibility," she said. "That's what you're doing." I stopped asking. I gave them $350 from my first check. I kept $100. I bought groceries with $60 of it. Shampoo, deodorant, and tampons took another $20. I had $20 left. I put it in an envelope and hid it under my mattress. The weeks blurred together. I worked. I came home. I handed over money. My mother started adding things to the list. Cleaning supplies I used, electricity for charging my laptop, a fee for using the washing machine. She called it fair. I called it suffocating. I started cutting corners everywhere I could. I found discount codes online. Those TikTok hacks where you tap a button over and over to shave a few cents off essentials. I bought the cheapest toilet paper, the generic laundry soap, the store brand everything. It felt humiliating. I had a degree. I'd graduated with honors, and I was splitting a roll of paper towels into 2 weeks of use. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sneak downstairs and use a little of their dish soap, a drizzle of their olive oil, a few sheets of their paper towels. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't afford to replace things fast enough. I felt like a thief in my own home. One evening in July, I was washing dishes when my mother came into the kitchen. She opened the cabinet and stared at the bottle of dish soap. Then she looked at me. "Did you use this?" she asked. I ran out of mine. "So you took ours?" "I used a little. I'll replace it." She set the bottle down on the counter between us. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You take and take and take, and you don't even think about it." I said, "I'll replace it." "You shouldn't have touched it in the first place," she said. "You don't respect boundaries. You don't respect what we've done for you." I turned off the water. My hands were shaking. "I give you almost everything I make. I pay rent to live in my childhood bedroom. I buy my own food. What else do you want from me?" "Gratitude," she said. "A little gratitude would be nice." She walked out. I stood there with wet hands and a sinking feeling in my stomach that this wasn't going to get better. I started staying later at work. I volunteered for weekend shifts, anything to avoid being home. My coworkers noticed. One of them, a woman named Angela, asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. By August, I'd saved $270. It was hidden in 3 envelopes under my mattress, in a tampon box, and inside an old textbook. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't write it down. It was the only thing I had that felt like mine. Then my mother found the envelope under the mattress. She was putting away laundry. That's what she said. I don't know if I believe her. She came into my room holding it. "What's this?" My throat tightened. "Savings." "For what?" "For moving out." She stared at me. Then she laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. "You really think you can leave? With this?" She waved the envelope. "You don't even make enough to cover rent here. How are you going to afford your own place?" "I'll figure it out." "No," she said quietly. "You won't, because you owe us. And until the debt is paid, you're staying right here." She left the envelope on my bed and walked out. I didn't touch it for a long time. When I finally opened it, the money was still inside. But the message was clear. I wasn't saving to leave. I was paying to stay trapped. September came, and I was still there. Still handing over paychecks. Still buying the cheapest version of everything. Still feeling like I was shrinking inside that yellow bedroom. My father started keeping a ledger, an actual notebook with columns and dates. He showed it to me one Sunday morning while my mother made coffee. He'd calculated everything they'd spent on me, from birth to graduation: diapers, formula, doctor visits, clothes, school supplies, birthday parties, college tuition. He had numbers next to each category. Estimates, he called them. The total at the bottom made my stomach drop. $167,000, he said, tapping the page. "That's what you cost us." I stared at the number. It didn't feel real. It felt like something he'd pulled from the internet, from some article about the cost of raising a child that he'd twisted into a bill. "You're not serious," I said. "Completely serious." He closed the notebook. "Now, I'm not saying you need to pay all of it back. I'm reasonable. But you need to understand the investment we made, the sacrifice." "I didn't ask to be born," I said quietly. My mother set her coffee mug down hard. "Excuse me. I didn't ask for any of that. You chose to have me. That's what parents do. They take care of their kids. And kids are supposed to take care of their parents," my father said. "That's how it works. We gave you everything, and now you act like we're the bad guys for expecting something in return." I looked between them. My mother's mouth was pressed into a thin line. My father's expression was calm, like he was explaining simple math to someone slow. "I'm giving you most of my paycheck," I said. "What more do you want?" "Appreciation," my mother said. "Respect. An acknowledgement that we didn't have to do any of this." I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. "I need to get ready for work." "We're not done talking," my father said. "I am." I went upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed, hands shaking. $167,000. Like I was a loan they expected to collect on. Like love had an invoice. I started looking at apartments that week. Studio listings an hour away where rent was $600 a month. Basement rooms with shared bathrooms. Sublets that required first and last month plus deposit. Everything required money I didn't have. Every time I got close to saving enough, something came up. My mother needed money for a household repair. My father raised the utility contribution. They found new ways to take. In October, I got a second job. Weekend shifts at a coffee shop. 6 hours each Saturday and Sunday. Minimum wage plus tips. It wasn't much, but it was something they didn't know about immediately. I told them I was volunteering, helping a friend. I don't know if they believed me, but they didn't push. I kept that money separate. Cash tips in a new hiding spot, inside a box of tampons in the very back of my closet. Underneath the cardboard liner. $40 one weekend. $53 the next. Small bills that added up slowly. But I was exhausted. I worked 50 hours a week between both jobs. And every evening, I came home to their ledger. Their comments. Their reminders of what I owed. I stopped eating dinners with them. I'd grab something cheap on my way home and eat in my room. It was easier than sitting at the table. My mother noticed. Of course she noticed. "You avoiding us now?" she asked one night, standing in my doorway. "No, I'm just tired." "Too tired to spend time with your family?" "I spend time with you." "Hiding in your room isn't spending time." She crossed her arms. "You know, when I was your age, I would have done anything to help my parents. I didn't complain. I didn't make them feel guilty. I'm not making you feel guilty. You're making us feel unappreciated," she said. "After everything we've done." I didn't respond. She stood there for another moment, then left. I cried that night. Quiet, frustrated tears into my pillow because I couldn't afford to be loud. November arrived, and I got an interview. A real one. Marketing coordinator position at a firm downtown, $45,000 a year with benefits. I didn't tell my parents. I wore my best outfit. Borrowed a blazer from Angela at work, and went to the interview on my lunch break. It went well. Really well. They said they'd be in touch within the week. I let myself hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe I could take the job, save up fast, and be gone by January. I started looking at apartments again, this time with actual optimism. The rejection email came 4 days later. They went with someone with more experience. They encouraged me to apply again in the future. I sat in my car in the parking lot and read it 3 times. Then, I put my phone down and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. I was stuck, truly stuck. That night, my father told me they were raising the rent, $400 a month now. Utilities went up to $75. They'd calculated my increased earnings from the coffee shop, he said. I must have mentioned it at some point, or maybe my mother saw the cash. I don't know, but they knew. "You're making more, so you can contribute more," he said. "It's only fair." Fair, that word again. I handed over the money. I watched my envelopes empty. I felt something inside me harden. I started documenting everything. I kept a notebook hidden with theirs. Every dollar they asked for, every fee, every charge. I wrote down the conversations, the amounts, the dates. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I needed to see it written down. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining this. One Saturday in late November, I was working at the coffee shop when an older woman came in. Well-dressed, kind eyes, the type who orders a decaf latte and leaves a good tip. She sat at the counter and we talked while I made her drink. She asked about me, where I went to school, what I was doing now. I gave her the sanitized version. Recent graduate, working while I look for something in my field. Living at home to save money. She smiled. That's smart. Family can be such a support system during transitions. I almost laughed. Instead, I just nodded. She left a $10 tip on a $5 drink. I thought about that phrase all day. Support system. I wondered what that actually felt like. December came. The ledger grew. My father had started adding interest. He didn't call it that, but that's what it was. A monthly calculation based on what I still owed from their original investment. The number climbed every time I looked at it. "You'll never pay this off at this rate," he said one evening. He wasn't angry. He was matter of fact. "You need to be more aggressive about finding better work. This part-time stuff isn't cutting it." "I'm trying. Try harder." I went upstairs and pulled out my hidden notebook. I flipped through the pages. Months of numbers. Months of taking. I looked at the total I'd calculated. They'd taken $6,200 from me since graduation. $6,000. That should have been my escape fund, my deposit, my start. I sat there on my bedroom floor with that notebook open, and something shifted in my chest. Not anger exactly. Something colder, something clearer. They weren't going to let me leave. Not willingly. Every time I got close, they'd find a new fee, a new charge, a new reminder of what I owed. This wasn't about responsibility, or respect, or gratitude. This was about control. And as long as I stayed, as long as I played by their rules, I'd never get out. I closed the notebook. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened a browser. I didn't search for apartments this time. I searched for tenant rights, legal definitions of rent, documentation requirements. I read for 2 hours straight, taking notes in the margins of my notebook. Then I searched for one more thing: family financial abuse. The articles that came up described my life with perfect accuracy. The control, the isolation, the manufactured debt, the way they framed exploitation as love. I bookmarked 6 of them. Then I started searching for lawyers who offered free consultations, because I finally understood something that should have been obvious from the beginning. This wasn't about paying them back. This was about making sure I never left. And now that I knew that, now that I could see it clearly, I wasn't going to play along anymore. I was going to find a way out, even if it meant burning every bridge I had left. The lawyer's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she did free consultations on Thursday afternoons. I took a late lunch break and drove there with my notebook in my bag. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with glasses and a calm demeanor that made me feel less foolish for being there. I sat across from her desk and told her everything. The rent, the fees, the ledger, the manufactured debt. I showed her my notebook. She read through it without expression. When I finished, she looked up. How old are you? 22. And you're paying them how much per month? Around $500 now, sometimes more. She wrote something down. Do you have a lease? Any written agreement? No, it's just what they tell me I owe. Do they provide receipts, documentation of expenses? My father has a ledger, but I've never seen receipts. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Here's the situation. Legally, they can charge you rent. You're an adult living in their home, but what they can't do is claim you owe them retroactive payment for raising you. That's not how parental obligation works. They chose to have you. They chose to support you. They can't send you a bill 22 years later. Can I get the money back? That's harder. You'd have to prove coercion or undue influence. And even then, family court is complicated. But what you can do is stop paying. Give them notice. Find a new place and leave. They can't legally force you to stay. I don't have enough saved to leave. She studied me for a moment. Then you need to make a choice. Keep paying and stay trapped, or stop paying and deal with the consequences. I left her office with a pamphlet on tenant rights and a sick feeling in my stomach. But I also left with clarity. I opened a new bank account the next day, a small credit union across town where my parents didn't bank. I had the statement sent to Angela's address. She didn't ask why. She just said yes. I told my parents I'd been cut back to part-time at my main job. Budget cuts, I said. Reduced hours. My mother looked annoyed. My father recalculated the ledger. Then you'll pay what you can, he said. But the amount you owe doesn't change. It just accumulates. I nodded. Handed over $200 instead of $5. Kept the rest. They didn't notice at first. But by the second month, my father asked questions. I stuck to my story. Fewer hours, less money, doing my best. He didn't like it. But he couldn't argue with a paycheck I never showed him. I saved $600 in January. $800 in February. By March, I had $2,400 in my secret account. I found an apartment. A tiny studio 40 minutes away. $650 a month. First and last month required. I toured it on a Saturday morning and put down a deposit that same day. Move-in date, April 1st. I didn't tell my parents. I packed slowly, quietly, a box at a time hidden in my closet. I took things to my car in the early mornings before they woke up. Clothes, books, anything I couldn't replace. I left behind anything they'd given me. I didn't want to owe them for a single item. March 30th, I asked Angela if I could borrow her boyfriend's truck. She said yes. She also said, "You're leaving, aren't you?" I nodded. "Good," she said. "You should have done this months ago." March 31st, I waited until my parents left for their Saturday errands. Then I moved everything. It took 4 hours. The apartment was mostly empty. just my boxes and a sleeping bag on the floor. But it was mine. I went back to the house one last time. I walked through the rooms, checked the closets, made sure I hadn't left anything important. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a letter. I didn't make it long. I told them I'd moved out. I told them I wouldn't be paying rent anymore. I told them I didn't owe them for being born, and I didn't owe them my future. I thanked them for raising me, because that felt like the right thing to say, but I didn't apologize. I left the letter on the counter, along with my house key. Then I drove away. My father called 16 times that evening. My mother called 9. I didn't answer. I let them go to voicemail. I listened to each one once, then deleted them. The messages started angry, then confused, then threatening. My father said I was ungrateful, immature, selfish. My mother said I'd regret this, that I'd come crawling back when I couldn't make it on my own. The last voicemail was from my father. His voice was cold. You walk away from this family. You don't come back. You understand me? You're making a choice, and choices have consequences. I saved that one. I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks. Then my mother sent a text, just one line. We're having Easter dinner. You should come. I didn't respond. 2 days later, my father sent a bill, an itemized list of everything I still owed from the ledger, plus the months I'd underpaid, plus interest, $14,600. He expected payment within 90 days, or he'd pursue legal action. I forwarded it to Patricia Chen. She called me that afternoon. They won't win. They know they won't win. This is intimidation. So I ignore it. You save it. And if they actually try to sue, we'll show a judge exactly what they've been doing. They didn't sue. But they did tell the family. I started getting calls from aunts, cousins, my grandmother. Everyone had an opinion. Most of them sided with my parents. I was selfish. I was breaking their hearts. I didn't understand how much they'd sacrificed. A few people reached out quietly, privately. An aunt who said she'd dealt with something similar. A cousin who said she was proud of me. Those messages mattered more than I expected. My grandmother called in May. She was the only one I answered for. Your mother is very upset, she said. I know. She says you've abandoned them. I moved out, Grandma. That's not abandonment. There was a long pause. Then she said, she also says you owe them money. I don't. I didn't think so. Another pause. Your grandfather and I paid for part of your college. Did you know that? I didn't. We gave your parents $30,000 to help with tuition. They told us they'd put it toward your education. Her voice was quiet, measured. I'm starting to wonder if they did. My stomach dropped. Grandma, I'm not asking you to do anything. I just thought you should know. She hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. $30,000. I'd had scholarships, grants, I'd taken out some loans, but not many. I'd worked part-time all 4 years. My parents always said college was expensive, that they were stretching to cover it, that I should be grateful. If my grandparents gave them $30,000, where did it go? I didn't contact my parents, but I thought about that number constantly. Months passed, I worked both jobs, paid my rent, bought my own groceries without guilt. I started sleeping better. The apartment was small and mostly empty, but it was quiet. It was mine. I saw my parents once, by accident, at a grocery store in June. My mother saw me first. She stopped in the middle of the aisle, staring. My father turned, followed her gaze, then took her arm and steered her away. They didn't say a word. I stood there holding a basket with pasta and tomato sauce, watching them leave, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just distance. By August, I'd landed a better job. Entry-level marketing position, $38,000 a year. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I started putting money into savings, real savings, for emergencies and plans and a future I was building myself. I never got an apology. I never expected one, but I did get something better. I got out. So here's what I want to leave you with. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you will use that love as leverage. They'll tell you that care comes with a price tag, that family means obligation, that you owe them for things you never asked for, and it will feel true, because they've been saying it your whole life. But love isn't a debt. It's not something you pay back in installments, and the moment someone starts keeping score, the moment they start adding up what you cost them, you need to understand something very clearly. That's not love. That's control. And you don't owe anyone your future, just because they were part of your past. I'm still figuring things out. I still have hard days. But I'm figuring them out in my own space, on my own terms, without someone standing over me with a ledger. If you're in a situation like this, I want you to know it's not normal. It's not okay. And you're not ungrateful for wanting to leave. You're just finally putting yourself first. So let me ask you this. Have you ever dealt with family members who treated your relationship like a transaction, who made you feel like you owed them for things parents are supposed to do freely? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and I promise you're not alone in this. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something or think about your own situation differently, hit that like button and subscribe. There are more stories coming, more truths that need to be told. Thanks for listening, and remember, you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself. You just owe yourself the chance to be free.